managing editor at ABC Newspapers, which includes the Anoka County Union Herald, as well as the Blaine Spring Lake Park newspaper and the Anoka County Shopper. As a kid, I was always into writing and reading, and to be a newspaper reporter is one of the jobs where you can write and be guaranteed a paycheck if you get a full-time job. So that was kind of where I got started. I had done some newspaper stuff when I was in high school, like a lot of people, and went on to go to journalism school, and then have worked in weekly newspapers since. I've been here since 2007. I was hired in July of that year to be the editor of the Anoka County Union at that time. And then in 2012, I also took on the Blaine Spring Lake Park Life and became the assistant managing editor. And then just last February, when Peter Bodley retired after more than 40 years with our company, I became the managing editor, and at that time we also merged the Anoka County Union with the Coon Rapids Herald to create the Anoka County Union Herald. So we have content coming from a lot of different areas every week. We have a pretty self-starting and reliable staff. 5 full-time staff here, as well as a collection of freelance or stringer reporters who basically handle a lot of the ideas and the generation themselves. They have their beats and they know what needs to get done around here.
Well, I attended the University of Minnesota and started out in astronomy, actually. And after a couple of years, decided that it wasn't the right course for me because physics was not my strong suit. So I decided to look at other career opportunities. I liked writing short stories when I was younger, and journalism just kind of really came to me one day. I really like the job because you can meet a lot of interesting people, and every day is truly different.
I've been with ABC Newspapers for about 1.5 years. It's my first job after graduating from St. Olaf College. I have always been interested in journalism since high school. I've always loved writing stories and talking to people. I created a paper for a while at my high school. It was just a little newsletter. And then when I went to college at St. Olaf, I immediately joined the paper there and worked my way up to be executive editor. And then I've just always been doing stuff with newspapers, internships, and now here I am, and I love it.
I've been with this paper 18 years. My start was kind of interesting. When I was a junior in high school, I said to my dad, someday I'd like to write for a living. And he says, well, why don't you go down to the paper and see if you could observe and see what's involved and what it would take to write for the paper. And so I came down and spoke with Peter Bodley. He was our managing editor here for, I think it was 42 years. And and he interviewed me, and I was very nervous as a high school student to try and tell him, I'm such a great writer, you should let me do this. And he asked me to bring some samples of my writing, and all I had was essays I'd written for English class, but I brought those in. And he thought they were well enough done that he offered me an internship for the summer. He kept me on as a stringer covering Coon Rapids High School news, which is where I was attending as a student. And after I graduated, they kept me on again full-time. And then I got married and moved away and raised kids and did all that. And I came back 18 years ago. So, well, as arts and entertainment editor, I do human interest stories primarily. I think every story has its own great value. And whether it's just to one reader or to, 10,000 readers, it's a good story. And so I like to tell those. And people have told me they like reading my stuff because it reads as if I was there talking to them, telling them the story, and keep it kind of on a friendly level. I like to get the reader to really feel like they know this person. The subject of the story is someone that maybe lives next door even.
In addition to being the managing editor, I still carry a reporting beat. So I cover the city of Anoka as a reporter and a photographer. With a government story, I spend a lot of time reading background and packets and attending meetings and doing interviews, and that's how I gather my information that way. For a feature story, it's a little bit different. I try not to go in with too much of a preconceived idea of what the story is going to look like in the end, because I just want it to go where it needs to go. So I spend a lot of time talking about people or talking to people and reading about them, and then usually kind of you get that little nugget that is going to be the thing that your story is going to hang on.
I attend council meetings and also write feature stories when I hear interesting stories about people in the community, and also cover few crime stories from time to time. Actually, I enjoy a lot of the government stories because I try to make it a lot less complex. Sometimes I could be writing about stormwater drainage and how it could impact a neighboring property, or it could be writing about a road project. I try to make the really complex topics, just a little bit more interesting for the readers and try to make them easy to understand.
I love the education beat. It's exactly where I want to be because it's a great mix of hard news and soft news. It's going into classrooms and watching kids make art. But then on the flip side, it's going to school board meetings and covering the budget impacts of legislation and much more meaty stuff. So it's a great blend of informing the community about everything that happens in the schools. The good and the bad. So yeah, and I get to meet a lot of great people, great teachers, great students, so it's a lot of fun. Today I'm covering a very fun special event at Northdale Middle School called the People's Choice Awards. Every year it's an annual event, and we come out sometimes and take photographs and talk to some of the middle schoolers who are being honored for their achievements. It's really tough with such a big coverage area to decide what to cover and what not to cover. So something that would catch the reader's interest, and trying to get into all of our many elementary, middle, and high schools. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we're always thinking about whether it's actual photographs of an event or graphics, if that's more appropriate. Sometimes with city council stories, we do a lot of maps or graphs with some budget stuff. But yeah, so we're always looking for photos for the front page, especially to really capture people and draw them into the story. They're a great enhancement to the words on the page. I try to make people as comfortable as possible when I'm interviewing them, and it's very different interviewing the mayor and interviewing a fourth grader, and you got to get them interested and engaged in the topic that you want them to talk about. So it's just about building that trust and asking the right questions, and sometimes that means very open-ended questions, and sometimes it means very specific questions, and asking the same questions a couple of times until they actually answer the questions.
Interviewing can be a really challenging piece of this job because you need to make sure you get all your questions answered, you need to be able to get a lot of information, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with being in that position. So I tend to try to connect with people over some common ground, and I'm pretty informal. I don't prepare a lot of questions ahead of time, so I try to let them lead the conversation and ask questions to get people comfortable and just kind of keep working away at that. They know what I need to know, and I let them try to guide me that way.
As I try to ask open-ended questions, sometimes I don't have, maybe starting out with real specific questions, I just say, hey, what's your point of view? Some people might think, well, you need to go to college to ask that question. And then for, a lot of times some of the government staff members, that I'm a little bit more specific on, exactly what I'm looking for.
When I'm interviewing someone, I get to know their personality, what makes them tick. And then I like to communicate that in the story just by what language I use or which quotes that I include, and maybe what kind of angle, what kind of lead that I use. That one was about a man who had a large boulder in his yard and had it engraved in memory of a brother who was killed in the Iraq War. Some stories are hard to write because they have such great emotion to them. It's kind of a challenge sometimes, but I was glad to be able to do it, glad to tell that story.
The best stories or the most rewarding stories are stories about people. I do a lot of profiles of people who've had a long history in this community, and those have been the best stories to write, without a doubt. Pretty recently, Anoka lost a pretty important person in the community in Mary Wynne Alvig when she died, and I wrote a profile about her decades of service to the city and to the community and what she had done for Anoka, and it is so rewarding to be able to share other people's accomplishments and to be able to tell their history and their story and their connection to the community.
I always love interviewing, like the World War II veterans. I got to interview Calvin Price, who's 89, and he received his Bronze Star. That was interesting. I always enjoy, talking to those folks. I always like the feature stories. Those are definitely rewarding.
This is our vault, and this is where all the old copies of the newspaper are bound and kept for eternity. We have papers in here that are 100 years old. I come in here every week to find front page news from 100 years ago, 75 years ago, 50 years ago, and 25 years ago. And I just choose one front page article from each of those years, and we put it in what we call a looking back column. So our readers who live in this area now can look and see 100 years ago what was big news. It was 100 years ago, and they were loading some hay into a tractor, and the tractor backed up and squashed this man. And the news was, front page news, that he had died. The headline was, "Fatal accident," and then it went into the details of how this happened and what his injuries were. And then at the very end it said, surgeons were able to rescue him and he did not die. But because it went to press almost, they were able to catch it, stop the presses, he's alive. And they were able to finish it at the bottom by saying, no, he lived through this terrible traumatic accident. So that was kind of interesting to see how putting together a paper at that time was so different than it is now, because everything now is electronic and digital and computerized, and you can just flip a switch and delete that story and insert the accurate story.
This is our classified sales office. These sales representatives sell classified advertising through a number of newspapers within our company. It's my job to get those papers out the door every week on deadline day, which is Wednesday for us. So we start our week on Thursday. We start talking about what stories we've got coming up, and we do some planning for what next week's paper is going to look like. And then as the week progresses, I do a little writing. I do quite a bit of copy editing. And then once we head into the first of the week, usually around Tuesday, we start to see the mock-ups of what the paper's going to look like, and I start designing and drawing where certain stories are going to go on which pages, and I work with a designer who puts those stories on a page.
Mandy will tell us what she would like in there as far as what story, what it's named, what kind of photos we want in there. We just then open up our templates and place the content in there, and voila. I also enjoy doing different additional tabs that we insert into the paper. We get to do a little bit more creative freedom with that and design covers and whatnot. Yeah, it's fun doing the paper every week because that goes out to everybody and it's local news, and it's interesting to see the stories before they hit the press.
And then we work through the process of proofreading and editing and getting those pages finalized.
With local organizations for important community conversations.
Most importantly, QCTV tells the stories that matter to the people who live, work, and play in the communities of Andover, Anoka, Champlin, and Ramsey.
Allison is my friend. We met in school when we were younger and grew up together. We did everything together. Then one day something happened, and people started to tease her, being really mean. At first she would pretend it was no big deal, that it didn't hurt her. But after a while it started to get to her. Her grades started to slip, and she used to be such an awesome student. Then she stopped talking to everyone, even me. Now she's not around anymore, and I miss her so much. Allison was my friend.
We send to press on Wednesday afternoon, and it goes to our plant in Princeton, Minnesota, where the papers are printed.
Well, I'm in charge of all the day-to-day operations of all the printing and publishing of the ECM company. So all of our titles, our 41 publications we do on a weekly or semi-bi-weekly, try to drive new business, increase revenue, and grow the business for the company. I've been in publishing for 36 years, so in multiple locations with a newspaper group in Indiana. I worked for Gannett, publisher of USA Today and the St. Cloud Times, and then came up here to these great people up here at ECM. Our market travels down to, I think everybody says down to about Northfield, all the way up to, we're up in Morrison County. We have a wide footprint, somewhere in the vicinity, about 650,000 households a week we touch. Mostly we're in the digital world today, like the internet and so forth, so we receive complete pages from our outside clients. So we get a finished page. We put that in what's called a pagination, or making it so when it prints on the press, they all come out lined up pages 1 through 10, or section A, B, and C, and so forth. We'll make an aluminum plate, which goes on the press. The press operates like a great big tire, where the paper goes through a couple of rubber carcasses, transfers the ink from this metal plate into this rubber carcass and onto the paper, folds it up, and it sends it out all nice and stacked. And we take that, we put it in our mail room, and where you get your retail inserts or your magazines, we collate that stuff, break it down for zip codes, routes, whichever ways, and have it all processed, tied, and set and waiting for our distribution trucks. So it's a step-by-step process. The clients, they send us the raw material, that finished PDF, and we take it through the rest of the process here at the plant. We have press operators that check it, we have customer service people that check our processes. We have proofing devices that make sure when we print something, it matches what the client sent us off the computer. Probably the biggest problems come when you have a mechanical breakdown. And, it's gonna happen. They're machines. If a machine breaks down, you gotta figure out how to fix it. We have a luxury, we have 3 different presses around here, so we have the ability to move some things around. Sometimes you gotta creep into those open windows. You gotta work a little faster, a little extra. Use some equipment sometimes you wouldn't in the most efficient manner to get it out the door, but probably mechanical breakdowns become your biggest challenge in this environment, in the manufacturing environment. You have to start at the back and work your way to the front, because the biggest important thing is having it ready when it's got to be delivered to get to the household, because you can't have a bump in the middle of it. So we set a schedule up. It's a pretty strict schedule that when it comes in at the front end, it has to come in at a certain time, because that's the only way it can follow through the process to make sure that it hits your doorstep when it's supposed to be there.
They come back to the office here on Thursday. We have commercial carriers who take papers to the different, gas stations, grocery stores, in the area. The Anoka County Union Herald is a subscription newspaper, so those papers are mailed to our subscribers through the post office. And then the Blaine Spring Lake Park Life is a free distribution paper, so those papers are hand delivered. We consider ourselves to operate more as a daily paper or a daily news outlet on our website. We have a great website in abcnewspapers.com. This year we were lucky enough through the Minnesota Newspaper Association, we won 2nd place for best website for newspapers in our category. We try to get breaking news online as soon as we can and keep people up to date, whether it's crime or accidents or the stuff that happens from day to day that you really need to know about. And then we also put all of our content online for people to check in on through the week. ECM Publishers has 48 publications, which is our ownership company. Our company runs an internal awards program, a Better Newspapers program for our editorial staff every year, and Union Herald generally has done pretty well with those awards. We've won first place in general excellence 2 or 3 of the last 4 years. It's pretty fun to get together and look at the best of all of the content from all those newspapers. I have a huge amount of respect for the talent and aptitude of our group in the newsroom. We all get along really well. We're an interesting and fun group, I think. We're really diverse and we get along great and we enjoy each other's company, which really makes the workday really fly by.
Each player on a baseball team has a specific responsibility. As a staff of news gatherers and reporters, we each have a specific responsibility or a specific area we cover, but yet we're all part of the same team. We're all in it to provide the best product that we can for our readers, and each of us maybe has a special area that we can accomplish that best, but we can't do the whole product without each other. And I think we all have a very good level of respect for our readers and for what they need and for what's going on, and really a real concern to get to real stories, to get to the bottom of things and get the truth out there.
I love it. It's so fun. I love the pace, and it's been really great getting to jump in and get to know a new community. I think local newspapers are so important because we really hammer home what's happening in local schools and local city council meetings, rather than the big papers do that, but much less frequently. Not every week, certainly, and not the length of stories that we devote to these topics. And it's just important to stay on top of what's happening and stay informed so that you can have a voice and take action. And I love local papers because you want to pick up something and see your best friend's little sister in a photo on the front page at a parade or a school event. It's just a record of what's happening in the community, and it's just real life.
Well, I think it's always good for people to stay informed about what's going on in their city and not just the neighborhood. Just having a basic understanding of what's going on, I think that's really important for people to know.
Well, I think what it still offers is credibility. I tell my daughter this all the time. Anybody can go on the internet and look on a blog, and you can look on 10 blogs and they all say something different. Well, in the newspaper world, when we print something, we check it and double check it. So we have that credibility level that when we put a story out there, that it's factual and it's truthful, and it's not 10 different opinions. And I think our credibility level, somebody thinking you can hold in your hands when you're reading your ads, when you're looking at that picture of your grandson or your granddaughter, that you have it in your hand and not on a computer screen.
I think the community newspaper plays a really important role. You know, it's the one newspaper that for a lot of people might have run their birth announcement, their graduation photo, their marriage announcement, and maybe their obituary. So it really follows people through their entire life, because people are so connected to the communities here in this area. So I think that that's a little bit of what we do different here. And we also have the benefit of really being able to get to know people and establish relationships in these communities, and that changes the kind of stories we're able to tell. I think that my whole life will probably be spent in writing and reading and that aspect. I really do like what I do, and I love to write and I love to read, so that's kind of the perfect job for me.